Employees who only bring in $20,000 a year in sales are gonna be fired. Just recently, after being appointed as the new department head, Jeffrey Wilson suddenly started saying stuff like that. I was the one in charge of all the overseas business, but I just couldn't keep up with Wilson's tyranny and decided to quit. Later on, Wilson would come to regret his words and actions. My name is John Anderson. People at work call me Anderson rather than by my first name. I just turned 53 not long ago and work as a section manager of the sales department for a food company. We mainly deal with canned foods, which have a stable demand across various demographics, so we've been maintaining steady performance. However, there are many types of canned goods, and new products are constantly coming out, keeping the sales department busy every day. The real challenge is how much shelf space we can get for our products and ensuring they are displayed in an appealing way to encourage purchases. We often get our products placed in supermarkets and convenience stores, but we have countless clients, and sometimes I even do reconnaissance at the stores. Being in sales, the emphasis on revenue is a tough aspect, as it's highly prioritized. It's tough to acquire new clients and just as hard to expand our shelf space at existing ones. Our company has a rule where monthly sales are posted on a whiteboard, so if the numbers are low, getting grilled by the boss comes with the territory. Moreover, right after training, you're sent out to do sales alone, so I used to get scolded every day as a newbie. Now, being in a leadership position, I don't want my juniors to go through the same thing, so I try to be as kind as possible. I probably felt that way because I had some peace of mind. Our department manager was an incredibly calm person, always speaking gently and treating everyone with the same respect. Whenever someone made a mistake, he'd silently handle it, and if he saw someone struggling, he'd offer a helping hand. That's why I had a great respect for him. However, the time came for this manager to retire. I felt sad, but as long as you're in the workforce, goodbyes are inevitable. Besides, with a new manager set to take over, I was actually pretty excited. Little did I know, this change would be a turning point in my life. On the day the new manager was to start, I arrived at the office a bit later than usual. Normally, I'm one of the first ones in, watering the plants and doing a bit of cleaning. Today, I was running late because my wife was feeling under the weather, and I had to prepare breakfast and lunch. Even so, I was still on track to make it to work on time. So I boarded the usual train and headed to the office. But when I got there, something seemed off about the atmosphere in the office. At this hour, there are usually quite a few employees who haven't arrived yet, but today, unusually many were already there. With some trepidation, I opened the office door, only to find all the staff lined up facing each other, and the newly appointed manager, Jeffrey Wilson, standing there. You're late on a day like this. That's lax for a section manager. I'm sorry, but I thought there was still about 20 minutes until the start of work. Haven't you read the email? This is why I dislike people who can't do their jobs. Accused of not reading the email, I reflected on my actions. As I recall, the last time I checked my work phone was around 9 p.m. the previous night. Wondering if I had missed something, I quickly pulled out my work phone from my pocket. Checking my mailbox, I indeed found a new email. At first, I thought it was my oversight, but upon closer inspection, I noticed the email was sent this morning at 6 a.m. The content was about Mr. Wilson taking over as the new manager from today and instructing us to come in early. But there's no way I would be checking my work phone at 6 a.m. See, the email did arrive, didn't it? It did, but realistically, if it's sent at this time, there are times when I wouldn't have seen it. Are you talking back to me? Every other employee managed to come in. Wilson immediately said as I attempted to argue back. True, other employees being here and me being late is a fact. But that's because other staff either walk to work or live near the next station. I live about an hour away by train, and without being informed at least the day before, it's impossible for me to arrive on time. I had originally worked in the same department with Wilson as senior and junior colleagues. We weren't particularly close, but we used to have friendly chats at drinking parties. Yet, as soon as he became the manager, he started exhibiting this tyrannical behavior. And it wasn't just this one day. I began to witness his tyranny on a daily basis. The workday itself ended without incident, But the real problem arose after working hours. We were supposed to celebrate Wilson's promotion with a meal at a somewhat fancy restaurant. However, for some reason, no one was at the restaurant. I had booked the place and informed everyone about the location and time through email, as requested by Wilson. But even when the reservation time came, no one showed up, so I reluctantly went in alone and waited for everyone else. After about 30 minutes, the waiter mentioned it would be a problem if I didn't order something. With no choice, I ordered just a beer and fries, and then called Wilson. "Manager Wilson, it's past our reservation time. Where are you? What are you talking about? I'm in the middle of being celebrated by everyone. Aren't you coming?" But I'm at the restaurant I booked." "Oh right, I forgot to tell you. The venue was changed." In the background, I could hear the voices of our colleagues having a good time. While I couldn't understand how this happened, it was clear no one else was coming to this location. I paid for the beer and fries I had ordered, apologized to the waiter for the inconvenience, and quickly left the restaurant. Then, I headed to the address Wilson had given me. It seemed the drinking party was just ending, as familiar faces began to emerge from the restaurant. "You're late. We're just about to call it a night, so you might as well head home," Manager Wilson said while saying goodbye to a junior colleague who was getting into a taxi. "Mr. Anderson, I thought you weren't able to come today." "No, I went to the restaurant I had reserved, but since no one was there, I thought it was strange and contacted Manager Wilson." "We were told by Manager Wilson that the venue was changed due to your circumstances, Mr. Anderson. It seemed a lot had happened without my knowledge." Manager Wilson had informed all other employees about the change of venue and had the party without me. Moreover, when the colleague noticed my absence and tried to call me, he was told that I couldn't come because I was busy with overtime. I honestly couldn't understand why I was being subjected to such harassment. We'd never had a fight or even a heated argument. The only change was that Manager Wilson had become my superior. I had always worked as a section manager, but Wilson used to be in a lower position than me. However, after landing a big contract, his personnel evaluation improved and he became a department manager before me. I'm even 5 years younger than Wilson, so maybe he didn't like the idea of someone younger getting promoted first. But still, what Wilson did to me was nothing but petty harassment, and I found it incredibly uncool. However, to avoid further damaging our relationship, I had no choice but to overlook it silently. Mentioning the harassment could only worsen my relationship with him. Despite the junior's concern, I wasn't going to be discouraged by something like this after decades in the workforce. I'd endure this too, with my usual mental strength. Ever since Wilson took the higher position, work became much harder for me. In the sales department, I had recently started handling overseas business and was struggling to sell our products using my limited English. However, the overseas business was just getting started, and there was no predecessor, so there was a lot I didn't know, and I was the only one who could handle issues when they arose. Naturally, this led to a lot of overtime, and it took a considerable amount of time to complete even a single task. Yet, in the midst of all this chaos, Manager Wilson said something outrageous. "Employees who only bring in $20,000 a year in sales are gonna be fired." What do you mean by that? Didn't you hear me? Those who can't make sales are out. It affects my evaluation, you know. From behind me, while I was working as usual, Manager Wilson threw such words at me. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, but apparently, that wasn't the case. "Fire. But you don't have the authority to do that, Manager Wilson. Authority doesn't matter. Just don't come in from tomorrow." But that's too sudden. It was my understanding that Manager Wilson didn't have the decision-making power to fire me, and being told not to come in put me in a difficult position. If I quit on my own, it would cause trouble for the company, and if I resigned voluntarily, I wouldn't get much in terms of severance. "If you really want to fire me, please get approval from the higher-ups first." "Huh? I'm in a higher position than you. So, if I say you are fired, you're fired." It was no use. I couldn't get through to him at all. Continuing this argument would solve nothing. I gave up on trying to reason with Wilson and focused on my work. However, Wilson seemed not to have given up yet, coming to my desk repeatedly to make snide remarks. "Planning to work even though you're getting fired? Just pack up and leave already." Manager Wilson's words caused a stir among the juniors, who started buzzing about what was happening. Given the recent celebration incident, I must have made them feel quite uncomfortable. But nothing I could say would affect Manager Wilson now. Any attempt at a response would just be met with counter-arguments. As I struggled not to cause any further inconvenience to those around me, Wilson continued his barrage of unpleasant remarks. This company doesn't need deadweight like you. You're a nuisance. Is that because my annual sales are only $20,000? Yay, that's right. Everyone else is pulling in $200,000, but you. Manager Wilson said this with a weary expression, as if exasperated. Think about me having to deal with a subordinate like you. Have I caused you any particular trouble, Manager Wilson? You don't get it, do you? Your very existence is the trouble. The atmosphere gets heavy just because you are here. I wondered what had driven Manager Wilson to this extent, as he was never like this before. The only conclusion I could come to was that he must have always disliked me. Otherwise, I couldn't understand why he would suddenly start harassing me. I had no intention of heeding Manager Wilson's words, but the repeated haranguing every few minutes was starting to seriously annoy me. By the time the clock struck 6 p.m., my frustration reached its peak. Seriously, don't come in tomorrow. Even if you do, your desk won't be here. Understood? Oh, you finally get it, huh? Make sure you leave without causing any trouble. From that point on, I think I stopped listening to what Wilson was saying. I neatly tidied up my desk and then wrote my letter of resignation on the spot. Most of the employees had already started leaving since it was past the end of the workday, but luckily the CEO hadn't left yet. I quickly wrote my resignation letter and decided to hand it directly to the CEO. Excuse me for interrupting. I would like to submit my resignation. You want to resign? Yes, I'm afraid I'm not getting along with Manager Wilson. I see. I'd rather you didn't leave, but we must respect the wishes of our employees. I was somewhat surprised but relieved that the CEO accepted my resignation so easily. Normally, I'd have to work for about 3 months to hand over my responsibilities, but it seemed that Manager Wilson would be taking over my duties. After explaining the situation to the CEO, he told me that if I wanted to leave, I could do so without having to worry about handing over my tasks. It was an exceptional case, but I felt truly grateful that this person was the CEO. That night, I bought a bunch of canned beers and drank until late into the night, not worrying about the time or the potential handover. The next day, I woke up past noon. When I checked my phone, I saw a long list of missed calls from Manager Wilson. Looking at the notifications, there were nearly 100 calls. Surprised by the abnormal number of calls, I had a rough idea of what it was about. As I was debating whether to call back, my phone rang again, with another call from him. Taking a deep breath, I pressed the answer button. Hey, what are you doing sleeping in so late? Get to the office now. Why should I? Why? Because without you, our overseas business isn't progressing. But yesterday, you said that I, being a dead weight, was fired, right? I was the one handling the overseas business, and the CEO had informed me that Manager Wilson would be taking over, so I had more or less anticipated this situation. Wilson couldn't speak English and had no idea about the duties I had been managing. What are you talking about? Just get to the office quickly. After saying this in an even louder voice, he hung up the phone unilaterally. Truthfully, I didn't want to go, but it was also stressful to remain unsettled. Reluctantly, I got ready and followed the familiar route to the office. Upon arriving, I could see from outside that Manager Wilson was running around the office in a panic. Catching sight of me through the gap in the door, he quickly approached. Hey, you're late. Why did it take you so long to get here? And in casual clothes, are you kidding me? Sorry, it takes about an hour to get here. Well, whatever. Just get back to your duties right now. I refuse. Manager Wilson tried to make me work, but I declined. He seemed surprised, not expecting to be refused. What are you saying? Stop messing around. I'm not joking. I submitted my resignation to the CEO yesterday, planning to leave without doing any handover. What kind of professionalism is that? Manager Wilson had a point, but I had already explained the situation to the CEO and completed my resignation process yesterday. So, no matter what he says, there's no need for me to work or do any handover. Seeing my firm stance of refusal to work, His irritation seemed to grow. He had been angry since I arrived, but now he was clenching his fists, trying to contain his anger. You have no idea how much trouble you are causing us. No matter what you say, I have no intention or need to work. You've been spouting nonsense since you got here. Just as Manager Wilson's anger was about to erupt, the office door behind me opened. The CEO stood there, silently observing us. You've come at the right time. Please do something about Anderson. I apologize for causing trouble, sir. Keep quiet, Anderson. Thinking the arrival of the CEO could turn things in his favor, Manager Wilson spoke more assertively, apparently assuming the CEO would side with him. However, I could tell from the CEO's gaze that he was probably angry at Manager Wilson. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Anderson, I need to speak with both of you. Can you come to another room? Sir, there's no problem discussing it here. Let everyone hear. Is that so? Mr. Wilson, I've heard that you've been harassing Mr. Anderson. In that instant, the smile vanished from Manager Wilson's face. He probably thought he was betrayed, expecting the CEO to be on his side. The CEO had accepted my resignation largely due to Manager Wilson's actions. Having experienced something similar in his own career, the CEO respected my decision. It's clear now just how despicable Mr. Wilson is. No, it's not like that. I had no choice because he was incompetent. Frankly, I'd prefer you to resign, but be thankful that the law prevents me from enforcing that. Understand? Yes, I'm sorry. Manager Wilson was reprimanded by the CEO in front of everyone. His shoulders slumped. He could have avoided this public humiliation if he had agreed to go to another room, but his desire to embarrass me backfired. It's a reminder that people can sometimes become arrogant, and seeing Manager Wilson, I decided to take it as a lesson in what not to do. Despite Wilson's wrongdoing, there was no concrete evidence, and even if there were, it wasn't possible to fire him forcibly. So, the CEO assigned him a new task. Mr. Wilson, you will take over the overseas business that Mr. Anderson was handling. That's settled then. Yes, I'll do anything. I deeply apologize for any inconvenience I've caused. You're apologizing to the wrong person. Startled by the CEO's sudden shout, Wilson flinched. Then, turning towards me, he bowed deeply. Whether his apology was sincere or not, I didn't know, but having already resigned from the company, it no longer mattered to me. Besides, Wilson's apology didn't resonate with me at all. In the end, that day simply resulted in Manager Wilson being embarrassed in front of everyone. And coincidentally, I completed my resignation process, officially becoming unemployed. I had always thought having a steady job was everything, but now I realized I could take on anything. With the savings I had, I could afford to explore my interests without burdening my wife, at least for a while. After some time, I started looking for new job opportunities. At 53, I could have chosen not to work, but being idle at home felt extremely uncomfortable, and I found myself wanting to work again. Having handled overseas business previously, I wanted to find a job that involved using English, looking for companies with international operations. Then, about a month later, I received another call from Wilson. I wondered what he wanted after all this time. I could have chosen not to answer, but to avoid any potential complications, I quietly pressed the answer button. Help me, I can't handle this anymore. Hello, Manager Wilson. Long time no see. What's the matter? It's impossible to generate sales in the overseas business. It seemed he was struggling with the overseas business he had taken over from me and was now calling to ask for my help. As much as you say you need help, I'm no longer an employee there, so there's nothing I can do. It's your fault for not doing a proper handover before you left. This is some joke. He sounded extremely frustrated, muttering complaints in a low voice over the phone. Okay, you don't have to come to the office, but can you at least meet with me once? I don't mind meeting. When would be good for you? Meet me this afternoon at a cafe near the office. This is how Manager Wilson and I ended up meeting again after a month. I never thought I would see him again, but here we were in this unexpected situation. I was preoccupied with my own matters and planned to wrap up the conversation with him as quickly as possible. You're late. Have a seat. About the overseas business matter you mentioned on the phone, there's nothing I can do about it. Please, find some way to help. Using translation tools doesn't work well, and the clients are getting angry with me. Manager Wilson had taken over the overseas business I was handling, but since he couldn't speak English, he couldn't understand emails from clients. And the emails he sent were all dependent on translation tools, which often led to miscommunications due to erroneous translations. No one else in the company speaks English, and I'm at a dead end. You, Manager Wilson, were the one who drove out the only person who could speak English. I know, I've already said I'm sorry. Can you come back? With no other English-speaking employees, Manager Wilson had to shoulder the responsibility of the overseas business. He was asking me to return, but that was out of the question. I forgot to mention, I've already found another job and started working. Huh, you quit just a month ago? That can't be true. You're just making excuses. It's true. Do you want to see proof? Saying this, I pulled out a business card from my pocket. Truth be told, finding a new job wasn't easy. I had to write numerous resumes and send them to various companies, attending several interviews. Only one company was willing to hire me. I had already started working there, and I was using my lunch break to meet with him. The company you're at. It can be. Yes, it's the same company where you, Mr. Wilson, were rejected during your job hunting days, isn't it? How did you know about that? I heard it from someone else. It's ironic, isn't it, that I would be accepted by the company where you were rejected. The only company that offered me a position turned out to be the very company Manager Wilson had aspired to join as a new graduate. It was a major company, famous for its substantial bonuses, and specialized in international business. I had successfully joined their department handling overseas business and started working just a few days ago. Why did you end up there, and I'm stuck with this company? It's not so bad, right? You became a manager after all. That's not the point. It's not the industry I wanted to work in. Wilson, who had called me hoping for help, was taken aback and started to unravel upon learning the truth that I was working at his dream company. I never thought I'd be re-employed at my age, nor did I imagine there would be a company willing to hire me. But when I passionately conveyed my past efforts during the interview, they expressed their desire to hire me. It felt like a recognition of my worth, and I ended up tearing up in front of the interviewer. The interviewer was surprised but kindly treated me to coffee. On reflection, I realized how fortunate my life had been. Aside from the harassment from Wilson, everyone at my previous job, including the CEO and my juniors, were kind, and my new workplace also seemed full of considerate people. Realizing this gave me a newfound sense of confidence. Manager Wilson, no, Wilson, you've lost. That can't be. Me, lose to you. As my lunch break was nearing its end, I left the payment for my coffee on the table, bowed slightly, and left the cafe. Stepping out, the bright sunlight showered down on me. Normally, I would find such brightness bothersome, but today felt different. It was as if even the sun was acknowledging the courage I had shown in standing up to Wilson. Later on, I had a call from a junior colleague at my former workplace and was informed that Wilson had resigned. Despite his efforts to revive the overseas business after our conversation at the cafe, it seems he was unsuccessful. The overseas project was always a risky venture with limited budget, so its failure didn't significantly impact the company. However, when I was in charge, it had started to show promise, leading to some speculations about its potential success. But after Wilson took over, the project quickly deteriorated, disappointing the CEO and other employees. The atmosphere back then was terrible. Though, I felt sorry for Mr. Wilson. I'm sorry for any trouble I caused by leaving abruptly. Don't mention it. And about Mr. Wilson, he resigned after that. He told me that Wilson, faced with the failure of the project and subsequent criticism, couldn't handle the pressure and chose to resign. It's ironic how he, who was so assertive against me, quickly lost his confidence when faced with adversity. Some time later, I went out for a drink with my junior colleague. It's been a while. You look great. Yeah, really. You two seem to be doing well. How's everything going lately? We talked about work, personal life, and various other topics. After about 3 beers, we were both getting fairly tipsy. That's when someone familiar walked into the restaurant. When I glanced toward the entrance, I noticed the figure. Isn't that Mr. Wilson over there? Wow, it is. Should we change seats so he doesn't notice us? Jer, let's try to avoid being seen. We attempted to leave the restaurant discreetly before Wilson spotted us, but it was too late. His seat happened to be right next to ours, and he quickly recognized us. Wilson immediately headed over to our table. What are you guys doing here? Oh, we just decided to grab a drink together. You guys have it so easy. I'm going through tough times. Wilson, uninvited, began to share his recent life developments. After voluntarily resigning, he found it challenging to re-enter the workforce with only 2 years left until retirement age, so he struggled to find a job. Eventually, he started working part-time at a family restaurant, but being surrounded by much younger co-workers, he struggled to keep up physically. He was often reprimanded for mistakes by younger staff, and because of that, his shifts were reduced, leading to financial strain. His wife, who had been working to support them, eventually became despondent with the unimproving situation and left. I have nothing left now. And yet, why do you guys seem so happy? That's unfortunate to hear. Don't just brush it off with words. Mr. Wilson's outburst drew the attention of other customers and staff. His behavior was causing a disturbance, and it seemed like he was about to be asked to leave the restaurant. Wait, why do I have to leave? That's ridiculous. You're causing a disturbance to the other customers, sir. I'm a customer too. I won't allow you to throw me out like this. Fine. Manager, please call the police. The mention of calling the police seemed to scare Wilson. Grabbing his bag and coat, he hurried towards the exit. I'm never coming back to this place. And you two, you're both gonna be sorry for this. After his dramatic exit, it turned out that one of the customers had already called the police, who arrived just as he was leaving the premises. While he wasn't forcibly taken away, the commotion led to him being banned from the restaurant and marked by the police. Since then, I haven't seen him. Rumor has it that he's been making a scene in various places, getting banned from more venues, and gradually narrowing down his territory. 2 years have passed since I re-entered the workforce. I've gotten used to the new job, handling daily tasks without issue. The company already had a solid foundation for its international business, so I had a good grasp of how to handle any troubles that arose. Recently, I was appointed as the leader of a new project. I'm not used to leading, but my colleagues are supportive, contributing ideas I wouldn't have thought of. The company has a great culture where communication flows easily, regardless of age or position. There are even team members younger than me with higher positions, but they create an environment where I can actively share my opinions. We often hang out outside of work, and just recently, we all went golfing together. I'm not particularly outgoing and don't have many friends, but the enjoyment I'm experiencing now is thanks to the people around me. Learning the value of relationships, I've become more active in participating in events. Moreover, my relationship with my wife is thriving. With the change in my job, I've had more time to help around the house and go out together. I'm determined to live each day cherishing and protecting this happiness.